Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast, your home for weekly information and inspiration to help you get the graduate job of your dreams.
Hello and welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast with your host, James Curran. The Graduate Job Podcast is your home for all things related to helping you on your journey to find that amazing job. Each episode I bring together the best minds in the industry, speaking to leading authors, graduate recruiters and career coaches who bring decades of experience into a bite-sized weekly 30-minute-ish show. Put simply, this is a show I wish I had when I graduated. Hello and welcome to the show today. I am very excited to have you with me for a very special episode, as following hot on the heels of my last episode with Jack, who was a listener of the show and a member of the How to Get a Graduate Job course, I am today joined by fellow course alumni member Callum, as he shares how he managed to get on the graduate scheme with top graduate employer Proctor and Gamble. So Callum is, just like you, a listener to the show who decided to sign up to the first launch of my course last September. And in today's episode, he shares his journey from graduating at Manchester Uni through to bagging a place on the much sought after P&G graduate scheme. He shares his first-hand experience of going through each stage of the application process for a variety of FMCGs, consulting companies and engineering firms, spilling the beans on what you can expect at each stage, from the online application, the video interviews through to the assessment centre. He shares what went well, mistakes he made, what you need to do to stand out from the crowd, and why he recommends that you sign up for the How to Get a Graduate Job course. It's an inspiring episode today. Getting a graduate job can be hard, but Callum shows you how it is possible and how if he can do it, you can do it too. So the links to the show notes today, including a full transcript, can be found at graduatejobpodcast.com/Callum, which is CALLUM. Make sure you listen to the end of the episode as I share the date for the relaunch of the How to Get a Graduate Job course, when it will be coming to you with lots of special bonuses and extra coaching time with me. So if you are serious about wanting to get a graduate job and you want to get it first time around, just like Callum did, then make sure you stick around to the end of the episode to hear the details for that. So without further ado, let's head on over to my chat with Callum. I'm very pleased to welcome to the show listener and member of the How to Get a Graduate Job group, Callum. Welcome to the Graduate Job Podcast.
Hello, James. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you for appearing on the show. And yeah, today we're going to explore your journey to getting on one of the most sought after graduate schemes. You can tell us how you managed to bag a place on that one. But before we do, let's maybe give the listeners a little bit of background so they can understand a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I guess I'll start at university. I went to uni at Manchester. I studied material science and engineering. So that was a 4-year course. After sort of finishing uni, I always knew that I wanted to take a year out before I started looking at sort of longer term employment, really. So I graduated back in the summer of 2019. And then I worked on a kibbutz in Israel for 6 months. Came back home for Christmas with the intention of going out and getting a bit more traveling in. Unfortunately, there was a little lady called COVID came along and sort of put a halt to that. So I ended up doing an internship, a 6-month internship at an FMCG startup. And then after commencing that, decided that it was time to get cracking with graduate applications.
Excellent. And was that how you came across the show? How did you find the podcast?
So I think I actually came across it whilst I was in Israel. I was started to sort of think about what potentially I'd be interested in doing afterwards. And at that point in time, Teach First was something that I'd heard about, and I think I just sort of Googled almost Teach First graduate scheme, and the podcast popped up on YouTube and gave it a listen, and thought it was quite insightful, and almost put a little note in it and thought that's something I would definitely come back to when I started to apply to more graduate schemes in earnest.
Excellent. And you mentioned when we were chatting offline that actually initially you didn't think graduate schemes were for you. What made you switch then to start thinking that you wanted to apply to them?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, when I was at university and sort of finishing my fourth year, I hadn't really put a whole lot of thought into what I was going to be doing post this gap year. And I think most sort of students almost deal with perhaps a little bit of anxiety as to what they're going to do after university, because for the most part, you go through school and you know that you're going to be going to university, and it's almost only when you finish university that you've got this whole world of possibilities. And I think it can be quite a daunting sort of decision and thing to contemplate. So graduate schemes, I knew that some of my friends were applying to them, but it was almost something that I didn't really feel like I wanted to commit to, because I wanted to go off and do something a bit more interesting. I wanted to have, some more worldly experiences, let's say. And then when I did come back to the UK and was working for the startup, it was fantastic work experience, and I learned a lot about the working world and I guess myself in a more professional setting. And I think one of the main things that stood out to me was, as great as that experience had been, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of room and opportunity for my own personal and professional development at a smaller company. And that's what when I reflected upon that, I realized that actually that was probably the benefit in me applying for these grad schemes, in that they are a more structured program, with the idea being that after a year, 2-3 years, by the end of it, you're looking at more of a leadership position. And really it's almost a fast track system that's trying to improve really your professional development. And so that's when I made the decision that actually, it would be of benefit to me to apply for these graduate schemes.
Yeah, and that was similar to my experience. So I was working for a low-cost airline at the time after university, and loved the company. It was an amazing experience, loved the people, but they just had that awareness that the long-term development just wasn't there. It was a smaller company. They didn't have those type of things in place, and had the recognition that graduate schemes are set up just with that sole purpose in mind. They are to develop the future leaders of the business. No matter which company you apply to, they see the graduate scheme as where the future leaders are coming from. So they invest in you accordingly. So no, good insight that you were able to realise that with your applications. So you were one of the initial cohort members of the How to Get a Graduate Job course. So what made you How to Get a Graduate Job course? So what made you A, get in touch, and B, sign up for the course?
So I had finished my internship at this startup and made the decision that I was not going to continue working there, and I was going to almost be applying sort of full time to graduate jobs, which then sort of put me back in touch with the podcast. And I think you, James, had released an episode, or you'd begun to speak about in your more recent episodes that you were doing this course. And I found that a lot of your previous material had certainly resonated with me, and I felt that it was really useful. So, when you said that you were going to be doing this course, I was definitely interested. And then I remember you sending out sort of an email to people that had signed up for notifications with your pod 50-minute just see how the process was going. Signed up to that. We had I think it ended up being sort of an hour-long conversation about all things graduate jobs. And I thought that actually, why not? At the end of the day, you're investing in yourself. It's setting you apart from all the other candidates. And it's a bit of an investment, but the idea is that it's going to improve your chances of getting a graduate job by the end of it. And the salary that you then start on is almost, you can account for that small investment that you're putting in sort of around September time, really.
Yep, no, definitely. I can remember you were in Canada. I was in Greece at the time, so it was we were sort of time zones apart. But yeah, we had a good chat. And as you said, it is an investment. So for lots of people listening, maybe they're not in a position to make that investment. In which case, that's cool. For people listening, maybe they're not in a position to make that investment. In which case, that's cool. There is 115 or so episodes of the podcast you can listen to entirely for free. There's lots and lots of brilliant content in there. But if you want to take it to the next level, you really want to give yourself the best possible chance as you apply to these super competitive schemes, as we'll go into detail for, then yeah, definitely check out the course howtogetagraduatejob.com. So let's then start about, so you signed up for the course, and so this would have been September time, and did you have a firm idea in your head then of the exact companies that you wanted to apply to? Had you really narrowed it down by this point, or were you still open to offers?
I was definitely open to offers, but like I said, having worked for an FMCG startup, and I quite enjoyed that business, I knew that I was certainly interested. So I knew that those companies were ones that I'd really be looking into. But then, a lot of my research into companies started around that September time. So at the beginning, I was very open to the kinds of companies that I would be looking at sending my application into.
Yeah, so I've got your application tracker open at the moment. So everyone who joins the course, we have an application tracker so we can track all the different stages of the applications. And you did really well with lots of people fail at the initial application stage and then the online testing stage. And you got through for every company you applied to for these two stages. So you really, really did well there. So maybe starting then with the CV. You had a really good CV that we didn't really need to work too much on. What advice would you give people for that CV stage?
The biggest advice, and I know it's something that you cover in the course, is just making sure that your CV is tailored to the specific company that you're applying to. So when you look at a job posting, let's say it's for Accenture, there's almost going to be 3 or 4 key traits that they're looking for. It might be problem solving, it might be attention to detail, it might be analytical. And then it is just about ensuring that you go through your CV, and whatever work experience you have, or sports that you played, or volunteering that you've done, it's about ensuring that you are then repeating these same phrases and characteristics that the employer or the job posting itself has mentioned. So going through your CV and saying, I am analytical because I did this, I am a problem solver because I did that. That would be my biggest advice on the CV part of it. Because I did this, I am a problem solver because I did that. That would be my biggest advice on the CV part of it.
Yeah, and it's a jigsaw puzzle where they're giving you the pieces and telling you exactly what they want. So you really shouldn't be falling at this stage, but lots of people do because they adopt a scattergun approach and they don't follow the advice which you did. But so from that initial stage, it was FMCG companies as you mentioned. So P&G, Mars. Lots of the professional services firms, so PwC, Deloitte, EY, and then a mix of more engineering-y, or companies within engineering aspects. So there was some car makers there, so VW, oil and gas, so BP. So a nice, and you knew the types of companies that you wanted to apply to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think not adopting a scattergun approach is one of probably the most important parts of the whole process, I'd say. And it's not just simply as easy as saying, okay, I'm not going to adopt a scattergun approach, because it's applying for these graduate jobs. It's this weird phenomenon where you naturally want to get as many applications into the system and rolling, because you're therefore increasing your chances of one of them being successful. But for every extra application you put in, that's then 1 hour less in a day that you can devote to an application that you might get to a video interview stage, or even just the beginning CV stage. So although I from reading sort of that's quite a small list of companies that I ended up really applying to, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was quite as easy as that. I know that there was definitely points where I was wanting and trying to push myself to apply to more companies, but I found that once you start applying to more, you're then almost you're increasing your workload by an exponential amount, and it starts to get really difficult to even then focus on individual companies.
Yep.
And so once I realized that was something that I was struggling with, I would then narrow down my focus, really highlight and push all my attention towards, it would be sort of 2 or 3 at any point in time. And I guess that's perhaps something that attributed to my success in the earlier stages.
Yeah, and sticking there with the early stages, so the online testing, I mean, how much you come from an engineering background, so, you've got numeric skills there. Still, you had to put the work in for the testing phase, didn't you?
Yeah, they're a skill. I think the first
for the testing phase, didn't you?
Yeah, they're a skill. I think the first. So again, you mention it in your course, that it's 100% worthwhile signing up to some of these websites that they've got a huge stock list, let's say, of all these numerical reasoning, non-numerical reasoning, all of these tests, that it's 100% worth signing up to those. It's really not that worth that much money, and it allows you to then, I think my routine was that I'd wake up in the morning, sort of have my breakfast and all that fun stuff, and then do 2 of those, spend an hour in the morning just practicing those, so that when I did start to get to that stage in the process, I was already well versed in passing those tests. Because I mean, even though I come from, I guess, an engineering background, which perhaps might be almost below the 50% or the 50th percentile, but then once you start getting 3, 4, 5 tests in, you start seeing your results increase hugely.
Yep.
So practice is definitely key.
Definitely. And you do really get into a rhythm. So when you're practicing, you're getting better. And then just due to the nature of when these tests come in the process, you tend to get a lot of them at the same time for different companies you're applying to. So it is a muscle that you build really quickly if you do put the work in. And yeah, the proof is in the pudding. As I said, you passed every online testing stage for each of the companies you applied to. So yeah, really impressive. Well done there, including PwC, the games-based one, which I actually did a practice one of that, and I failed that. So you did well with that one, blowing up the balloons. So sure,
yeah,
gaming skills coming to the fore there.
Don't ask me to sort of explain how I passed that one, because that is that is strange.
So then we moved on to the video.
How I passed that one, because that is that is strange.
So then we moved on to the video interview stage of the process, where we did a lot of work together on this. So members of the course got sort of credits to use sort of time with me, where we use the mock video interview tool. So you for listeners, it's an opportunity to practice in the same format for the video interview test you're going to get. So I've got a bank of different questions depending on different companies. So you'll get the same questions you're going to face, and then you'll have the same time limit. So 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is. And then we'd go through them together. So how did you find the video interview process, Callum? Can you remember the first ones that we did?
The first one that I did, I think, was to PwC, actually. And yeah, I did not enjoy video standpoint, but it's a very bizarre way to conduct an interview, where you are quite literally just talking to yourself on a computer screen.
Yep.
But again, practice makes perfect. It's a skill, learning to sort of see, right, I've got 2 minutes to give an answer, and as opposed to being in a face-to-face interview where you can kind of just sort of keep talking until you get very obvious cues from the interviewer that it's time to move on or wrap up your answer. Here you've got 2 minutes, so it's a skill that you get better at, telling a particular story using the STAR technique, which I don't know if we'll touch upon in a bit. Yeah, again, practice makes perfect.
Yeah, and yeah, as you mentioned, it's a skill. Having the timer in the corner, and you can just see ticking down, getting used to knowing, okay, I need 10 seconds to wrap up, I need 15 seconds to wrap up, or whatever it might be. Yeah, we'd used to knowing, okay, I need 10 seconds to wrap up, I need 15 seconds to wrap up, or whatever it might be. Yeah, there was some, you could see a huge improvement. If we can look back at the old videos from the first time you did it through to the ones at the end, and they were very slick. The answers were really tight because it's really difficult to get in 1 minute, an answer in 1 minute or 2 minutes, or say with Mars, where they ask you, the questions have got 4 different parts to the question, and you've only got 2 minutes to answer them. They are really, really challenging. Can you remember from the companies you applied to, any that were more challenging than others?
Probably the Mars one, and not necessarily because the questions themselves were quite challenging or abstract, but more that each question, and I can't remember them off the top of my head now, but each question would almost have on the screen, and you've got, say, a minute to think of an answer, and then you'll have, I think in the Mars instance, there was four minutes to give your answer. But that minute, about half of it was spent just reading the question and understanding, right, what are the 4 different points they want me to cover? And then you've got 30 seconds to quickly try and give a brief structure to your answer before the countdown starts. So I certainly found that to be, I think, the most challenging one, just because I almost felt that I was trying to structure my answer whilst I was actually delivering it at the same time, which undoubtedly probably isn't the best way to do it.
Yeah. So you had a really good bank of answers to questions. Which do you find more difficult? The competency questions you face, the strength ones, or the more motivational ones, even why you wanted to work for a particular company? Were there any that you preferred over any others?
In terms of the type of question, situational. In terms of the type of question, situational versus competency.
Yeah.
I think competencies are fine once you've got a good bank of questions, sort of or answers rather, in your mind. I guess the difficulty with them, and I started to find this as I had done a few of the video interviews, is almost you're retelling the same stories over and over again.
Yeah.
And you're, like I said, you're almost telling them to yourself, which starts to get quite tiring. But you just need to remember that actually this is the first time that whatever company it is you're applying to, that's the first time they're going to hear the story. So I think I remember we were doing one practice video interview, and I said after we'd done it and you asked how I thought it went, I said I actually just got quite frustrated with my answers because I was so bored of telling the same stories over and over again. So that's a slight difficulty, I guess, that you might have with the competencies. And the other ones are the motivation. I guess those can be a bit more difficult because they're more inherently personal. How can your past experiences or your future goals, how can they resonate with the particular company you're applying to? But there, I'd say really the key, like with a lot of stages of the process, is to make sure that you're speaking to people at the company. Yep. That you're applying to, because they might talk about a little project that you can then bring in your answer, or they might talk about a person or an aspiration that they have that you can then link into your own answers. And just speaking to a current graduate that is in the program and is, for the most part, I don't think I spoke to anyone that was not excited to be working at the company that they're at. That excitement definitely rubs off on you. And I would often find that I'd end these phone calls with people that are a year, 2, 3 years into the specific program, and I would feel a lot more motivation towards working and applying for that company. Yep. So definitely that's the key to the motivational ones. And
that's, to be honest, that's one of the things that you did really, really well, was in your answers. And it goes back to probably the number of companies that you applied to, was that your motivational aspects of the questions were really strong. As you said, you'd spoken to people who worked there. You knew about the company. You knew the name of people doing interesting things. You knew really interesting, bespoke aspects of the company. I can remember, was it PwC, where you were able to talk about their sustainability and the building that their head office being one of the most sustainable buildings in the country, and you're able to drill down into really specific things. It isn't just instantly readable from 2 minutes on their corporate website. It will be, because people don't tend to do that. It's the really generic stuff of, I really want to work here because you're number 27 in the Times top 100 places to work, and generic stuff like that. That's just not going to impress any graduate recruiters at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that line about PwC's sort of head office being ultra sustainable or whatever it is, I got it from speaking to someone at PwC. So yeah, definitely try and speak to the current employees of the companies you're applying to.
So at this stage, so again, looking back at the tracker, you were doing the video interviews sort of mid-November time. And so it'd been considering you started applying sort of September, so this is a couple of months till get to this stage. So how did you keep yourself going in terms of motivation? Because I know from when we were doing the webinars on the course, this stage. So how did you keep yourself going in terms of motivation? Because I know from when we were doing the webinars on the course, this was when people were starting to hit the dip a little bit. You've been applying. Some people, you're not hearing back. It can be a month or even longer before you get responses from people. How did you keep going through this period?
Yeah, you certainly start to lose a bit of motivation as you get through to November. But I think, and maybe my answer isn't necessarily going to be as useful to everyone, because I was quite lucky in that for the months of September and October, I was actually out in Canada living with friends. So although I was doing this full time, at lunch, I would sort of go out for a canoe ride because we were staying out on the lakes. And then sort of on the weekends, I would properly sort of relax and enjoy time with my friends. So when November came around, that was the first time really sort of slugging away with these applications. So in that sense, almost my dip was perhaps delayed by about a month or so. But I guess then when I was in sort of the dip of motivation around December time, it's just important to, I guess, just remember that it is a process, and you just have to you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself, and you have to trust the process, and you have to trust that you are doing the right things to get a job and then still take care of yourself. So is it going for a walk at lunch? Is it phoning a friend every evening? Whatever it is, do you like cooking? Make more of an effort to sort of help out around the kitchen, or actually say, right, every Wednesday and Friday, that's going to be me cooking dinner. Just staying in tune with yourself and make sure that you are staying healthy, both mentally and physically, is probably the best tip.
Positive support network around you of people who can keep you going when when you're in that dip and you're not hearing back and recruiters are slow and all that standard stuff. That the graduate recruitment process is difficult, especially chucking lockdown into the mix, and it's a difficult time. So you have that positive network around you, which is one of from my coaching, is one of the key things often, is just keeping people positive and through these difficult times. So you did really well with all the video interviews. I think the only one that you failed at was EY. Can you remember what went wrong with the EY one?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that I failed one of the, because their video interview stage, it was a mix of some, for sure, but I'm pretty sure that I failed one of the, because their video interview stage, it was a mix of some video interview questions and then some more situational judgment questions, where they're really just making sure that your personality matches up with what they're looking for in an employee. And there was a question that was asking about new and emerging technology that I just completely misunderstood. And I'm pretty sure that that's where I faltered there. So I think it was almost right. What would your response be to a certain situation? And very simply, it was either you use new technology that perhaps hasn't been tested, or you use tried and tested technology. And I thought that the question behind the question was asking, are you going to constantly be trying to use new techniques or the tried and tested ones? And so I think I got that one wrong, really.
Which one did you go for, the tried and tested or the new? Which one did you go for, the tried and tested or the new techniques?
I went for the tried and tested, whereas I'm pretty sure that what they're after is you're constantly wanting to be using new technology and exploring new routes to success.
Yep, it's tricky, especially those, the more interactive ones. You've really got to be focused. But, I'm sure you learned a lot from it, and you did progress through all the other video interviews that you faced, I think. So you did really well. And now we get into the assessment center stage. So one of the frustrating things you had then was PwC. They filled up all the spots, didn't they, on the scheme you're applying to? What hoops did they then make you jump through?
So for PwC, I was applying to, I think it was a data analytics scheme or something along those lines. And it was one that there wasn't a lot of spaces on that scheme. It wasn't the same as sort of the audit schemes where there might be 20, 30 spots. I think this role, there might have only been 2 or 3 spaces. So just by the time that I'd got through the video interview stage, I was told that I'd passed and had the assessment center, but there was just a few people ahead of me in the process. So they had to see how they went before they could offer me an assessment center, because there may or may not have been a space available at the end of it.
Yep.
So it ended up being the role was filled up, and I was given the opportunity to apply to a different role. But in doing so, I had to go back to the video interview stage, do another video interview, and then had to wait to hear back from that.
Yeah, it's one of the super frustrating parts of the process. And I know from some of the people I'm coaching at the moment, the frustrating thing is they've got through to the assessment center stage. They've jumped through all the hoops, done the video interview. They've got the confirmation that they've passed, and the response they've got from the company is well done, you've passed. You've made it through to the assessment center, but we don't know if we're going to have one because we might be full. So yeah, it's annoying when that happens. But the good news was you got through to the assessment center with P&G. So how did that one go?
So that one went well. The P&G assessment center is normally, if it wasn't for COVID, it's meant to be sort of a 2-day, I think they call it a career academy. So it's 2 days, you'd be on site, and I guess depending on what department you've applied to, you'd be shown around the sites, you get to see what some of the grads are doing, and then you might have to do a presentation, then you've got a final interview. So that didn't happen. Originally, it was then going to be a virtual event for 2 days. For regard, it was almost quite simple because I'd already been preparing for interviews and was quite well prepared for those. It was just another interview where, again, I had to sort of convince the interviewer that I really did want to work for Proctor and Gamble and that I was the right candidate for them.
And did you notice a real focus on that in terms of that motivation? Was that one of the things that he really drilled you on, the why P&G angle?
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. I think so. I ended up having 3 interviews in total for Procter and Gamble, and they all adopt a fairly similar structure in that it will be sort of 5 or so situational questions. Then there might be 2 or 3, 5 competency questions, then 2 or 3 situational questions, and then it turns into a bit more of an informal discussion of competency questions, then 2 or 3 situational questions, and then it turns into a bit more of an informal discussion about yourself, your motivations, why Procter & Gamble, what you've done in the past. And I definitely felt that in that final interview, there was a lot of focus being put into, okay, do I actually want to work for Procter & Gamble? Why do I want to work for Procter & Gamble? And those sorts of questions that I remember finishing, and when you asked me how it went, me replying sort of in the email saying that I certainly felt that I would be grilled a lot more in my motivations than I had previously. But then again, it's just, have you spoken to people at the company? Do you really know what your job is? Because that was a question that I remember getting asked almost. How do you know you want to work for us? How do you know you want this job? Because you've never done it before. You say you're going to like it, but how do you know what it is you're going to be, what it is that you're going to be doing? And in my answer for me to say, well, this is what I'm for me to say, well, this is what I'm going to be doing. I know this is what I'm going to be doing because I've spoken to person X at the company. I think is probably quite a good response to it, because you've gone the extra mile and you're proving that, okay, I want to do this and I know what it is that my job is going to be consisting of.
Yep. And yeah, as I said earlier, that was always one of the, the really strong aspects that really came across in a video interview, and I'm sure in person it came across even more. Because, and also, you weren't blagging, right? You were able to be honest with them, because this is a company that you're really interested in. It was in a role you're really interested in, and I know that sounds really stupid, but many times with graduates I speak to, that's not the case. It's people from that scattergun approach who are applying to companies just because they're open and the roles maybe aren't right for them, and they're trying to blag that. Yeah, I really come across if it's not true.
Yeah, 100%. I think, well, Proctor and Gamble was actually the first company that I applied to in my initial application stage, and was definitely in the sort of the top three, if not the top company that I really wanted to be working for. So when I got to that final stage there, I was quite confident at answering a lot of these motivational questions. I had work experience in an FMCG startup, so I had a lot of experiences to draw upon. But that's not to say that if you didn't have those experiences, that you could still prove your motivations for that particular company when it gets to that stage.
And of course, I didn't want to tell you at the time, but I was extremely confident you were going to get it. I knew you'd do really, really well, and you did. Do you know the big reveal for listeners? Do you want to tell them?
Yeah. So I got the job offer at Proctor and Gamble. Which is exciting.
Yeah, brilliant. And I thought you'd be chilling till September, but they want to get you in and get you working.
Yeah, so I'm starting on the 1st of Feb. Originally I thought that it would be starting September odd, but to be honest, it's actually quite nice being able to just get started during COVID, because the original plan was apply for grad schemes, hopefully get something lined up September, and then be able to go away for sort of 6 months or so. But obviously, with travel restrictions, that's not really too feasible. So I'm actually very happy that I'm going to be starting in, I think, 2 weeks time. Brilliant.
Welcome to the world of paying tax. About time we could get you involved. But yeah, you excited to be starting?
Yeah, really excited. We're out after university and done a bit of traveling. I know that there's certainly people that have probably spent more time jetting around the world. But I certainly feel ready to start work, and it's something that I feel like I'm making an active decision to do, as opposed to simply rolling into work or rolling into a graduate scheme.
Yep.
So I'm actually very excited for it.
Oh, brilliant. And as I mentioned, right, you did really well. You got through for you did the video interviews. Are you still, not that you're going to change your mind, but are you still waiting to hear from companies like 2 months later on whether you'd got through?
So I think Deloitte, they were one of the first. They might have even been the second video interview that I did. But I even got an email from them recently saying that, don't expect to hear back from us until I think the end of January. Hear back from us until I think the end of January. So yeah, there is a lot of waiting potentially involved with these companies.
Yep. Listeners, go into the graduate application process with that awareness. It is not a quick process. You will be waiting in between the different stages. And if you don't expect that, it can be really demoralizing, because you think, what's gone wrong? I've not heard anything. Is it going to be a no? It conversely tends to be the opposite. The longer you don't hear, probably the better your chances. No's definitely come back quicker than yeses. But yeah, as I said, 2 months before you did the Deloitte one on the 11th. Oh wow, 11th of October. So that'll be 3.5 months until finding the answer, which is, come on Deloitte, that is pretty poor. But yeah, it is a waiting game. So just bear that in mind. So time is running away with Callum. Before we move to the weekly staple questions then, do you have any tips then from the different processes, the different parts of the process? So from, say, the video interview to assessment centre, any advice you'd be giving listeners for these stages?
It's really boring because I'm sure, well, I can't remember if you repeat it quite a lot in these podcasts, but I know you repeat it a lot in the course. But honestly, speak to people at the companies you're working for. The information that you get from them, you can filter in every stage of the process, as well as then, I think I sort of alluded to it slightly before that, but almost this idea of sort of anxiety, right? What am I going to do after university? It's this big unknown, graduate schemes and all of that. But when speaking to someone that's been through the process, it humanizes it a lot more. You realize that actually there's a lot of people going through this. And yeah, honestly, yeah, that's the biggest tip I could give.
Super. No, I like that. Yeah. And you're right. I do mention it a lot in the course because it is just so important. And it's gratifying when people take the advice and, to see you do so well. You put the hard work in and you deserve every success. Especially the video interviews were top notch. You did really good jobs there. So you put the hard work in and you deserve it all. So well done.
Thank you very much.
So let's move on then to the weekly staple questions. I'm interested what nuggets you're going to share with listeners here. So first question, number one, what book would you recommend that listeners should read?
Yeah, so unfortunately, you're not going to get any pearls of wisdom in terms of books that are going to increase your employability. But I'm going to recommend The Last Exit to Brooklyn. I can't even remember what the author's name is, which is suddenly quite embarrassing. Is it? I'm not even going to take a guess because I know it's going to be wrong. But really interesting book. Definitely give it a listen. Not a listen, a read. Probably my favorite book of all time.
Hubert Selby Jr.
That is the one. Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost, I think it's like 8 sort of short stories that are all vaguely interlinked. And it's written, there's a lot of speech that goes on in all of these stories, but there's no speech marks. It's all, the way it's written is that it's written so well that you can pick up who is speaking simply from the way a sentence is written, which I found really interesting. I remember the first sort of 2 pages being quite difficult to work out what's going on, but once you get into it, the whole book just flows, and it's really cool. It's written really cool. It's written. Oh yeah, I haven't read a book that's sort of written anything like that. I'm sure that if there's any English grads or people who did slightly more literary degrees, that perhaps they can describe the I don't know, the techniques better. But yeah, Last Exit to Brooklyn. Give it a read.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd just off the top of my head, I would describe it as being written in the brusque everyman style of prose, and that's no way just taken from Wikipedia. So I've not read that one myself. I will have to check that one out, but I will be linking to it in the show notes, which today you can find at graduatejobpodcast.com/Callum, which is CALLUM. And next question, Callum, what website or internet resource would you point listeners towards?
BBC Sport. It's a fantastic way to procrastinate and waste a lot of your time involved in all the have your says. It's thoroughly entertaining watching or reading about all the Liverpool and Manchester fans heckling each other on these forums.
Not that Tottenham fans do that at all, do they?
No comment.
And final question today, what one tip would you give listeners that they can implement today to help them on their job search?
Do yoga. It's great for your mind and it's great for your body.
Not what I was expecting, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I've panicked there. But yeah, firming, do yoga.
Callum, thank you so much for appearing on the Graduate Job Podcast, and all the best at P&G.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me, James.
Many thanks there to Callum for coming on the show and
Having me, James.
Many thanks there to Callum for coming on the show and sharing his story of how he got a graduate job with P&G. As you can tell, I had a lot of fun recording that one, and it's one of the things I enjoy most about being a graduate career coach is, of course, helping my clients get graduate jobs, but also I'm working really closely with them over many months, sharing the ups and downs of their job search, but we have a lot of fun along the way. Now, that was recorded back in January. Yep, I know I have been slow getting this live, and at the time, Callum hadn't even started with P&G. Now it's 5 months later and he's been there a while, and there's an interesting postscript from the episode today. So Callum talked about how Deloitte had been really slow in coming back to him. Well, they did come back to him with the offer of a date for an assessment centre once he'd already started with P&G. And I'm sure it comes as no surprise for me to tell you that he did really well in the assessment centre, with the upshot that he was offered the graduate job with Deloitte. So well done, Callum. 2 job offers from 2 of the best graduate employers, a great position to be in. And that is the position I am always working for with my coaching clients, so that they get more than one offer so they can really pick the one that is right for them. So in last week's episode with Jack, he talked about the 2 offers that he had on the table. And wait till you hear my interview in a couple of weeks with one of my coaching clients who had 5 graduate job offers on the table to choose from. So a decision about what is going to be best for him. Now, what's it to be? Is it the bird in the hand of P&G versus the offer of a graduate job from Deloitte? Well, I was speaking with Callum today and he knows what he's going to do. But I'll let him tell those companies before I tell you on the show. So I'll tell you in a future episode. So there you go. Another successful and satisfied member of the How to Get a Graduate Job course. It worked for Callum, it worked for Jack, and in the next episode, you're going to see how it worked for all the other people who were on the course as well. Now, I'm going to be relaunching the course with some brilliant bonuses on the 1st of August. So put that date in your diary. That is the 1st of August. Put a note on your phone, as I will be offering for a very short period of time the course with some brilliant extra goodies, including one-on-one coaching sessions with me. So what's 1st of August? Put a note on your phone, as I will be offering for a very short period of time the course with some brilliant extra goodies, including one-on-one coaching sessions with me. So what should you do in the meantime? Well, visit howtogetagraduatejob.com, specifically howtogetagraduatejob.com/5 steps. That's the number 5 and steps, as that is where you'll be able to download my free guide, the 5 steps you must take before applying for graduate jobs. I'll then be able to keep in touch with you and let you know what you need to do to sign up for my course, and just how you can get it with the hundreds of pounds of free extras that will be going live for a short period of time from the 1st of August. It's going to be bigger and better this year, and you aren't going to want to miss it. I promise you that. So head to howtogetagraduatejob.com and apply it. See you next time.